Hey, you're in the wrong place.
Actually, I'm not.
Get the out of here.
The film opens in media res with Riley North brutally beating a thug inside a parked vehicle. After a violent struggle, Riley pins the man down, presses a gun hard against his throat, and demands to know if he remembers who she is.
You don't remember me, do you?
Without hesitation, she pulls the trigger and immediately sets to work cleaning up the crime scene to erase any trace of her presence. The scene shifts to the gritty streets of downtown Los Angeles. Riley drives back to her van, which is parked deep within the heart of Skid Row, a notorious, heavily depressed area overrun by endless blocks of makeshift homeless encampments and informal settlers. She slips inside the vehicle and quietly begins tending to her fresh wounds. While rustling through a bag, she finds a package of peppermint cookies. The simple treat triggers a wave of memories, taking her back exactly 5 years ago to the day this tragic journey truly began. At the time, Riley and her young daughter, Carly, were on their way home from a routine grocery run. However, they were aggressively confronted by Peg, the wealthy, snobbish mother of one of Carly's classmates, simply because they had taken a parking space she wanted. Riley chose to ignore Peg's entitled rant, keeping her composure for her daughter's sake, and the two eventually drove away.
You should have punched her lights out.
Can't go around punching people who are jerks, then you're just as bad as they are.
Riley later dropped by the workplace of her husband, Chris, to have him watch Carly. She affectionately reminded him that they needed to get everything ready for their daughter's upcoming birthday party. Afterward, Riley clocked into her own job at a bank, where her demanding boss forced her to work overtime as punishment for arriving late.
It's my daughter's birthday.
You asked for extra hours, I'm giving them to you.
Meanwhile, Chris was approached by his friend, Mickey, who pitched a dangerous but highly lucrative scheme. Mickey wanted Chris to act as the getaway driver for a heist targeting a powerful drug cartel. Mickey aggressively urged him to accept, framing it as a golden opportunity to lift his family out of financial struggle.
This greasy hand shit's not gonna get you there, man. This will.
Though tempted, Chris remained hesitant and said he needed time to think it over. That evening, Riley returned home from her late shift, only to find the house completely empty except for her husband and daughter.
Where's everybody?
Nobody came.
Carly was heartbroken. Not a single classmate had shown up to her birthday party. It turned out that Peg had intentionally sabotaged the event by inviting the entire class to a competing Christmas party.
Told you. You should have punched her lights out. My birthday sucks.
Determined to cheer their daughter up, Riley declared that they would have their own private celebration. She promised Carly a fun-filled night at the local carnival, complete with exciting rides and her favorite ice cream. Before leaving the house, Chris secretly left a voicemail for Mickey, firmly declining the heist offer and stating that he wanted to keep his hands clean for the sake of his family.
I'm out. I'm not risking it. It's not worth it, man.
Unbeknownst to them, as soon as the family left their house, a cartel scout was watching from the shadows. The thug immediately called his boss to report that he was tailing Chris. As it turned out, Mickey had already been captured and was currently being brutally tortured by the ruthless cartel kingpin, Diego Garcia. Believing Chris was actively involved in the planned robbery, Garcia coldly ordered his henchmen to eliminate him.
Smoke him. Make an example.
After finishing his twisted interrogation, Garcia decapitated Mickey. At the carnival, Riley's family was having a wonderful time riding the attractions, snapping photos, and enjoying their ice cream, completely oblivious to the danger lurking nearby. Garcia's 3 hitmen were watching them from a vehicle. When Riley briefly stepped away to get some napkins from the ice cream stand, the gunmen advanced and suddenly opened fire, unleashing a hail of bullets upon Chris and Carly. Riley was also hit as she desperately ran back, but her injuries were minor. She crawled to her husband and daughter, only to find them both lying lifeless on the ground. When the authorities arrived, emergency responders loaded a devastated Riley into an ambulance. A police detective named Michael was deeply shaken by the senseless death of a child, but his veteran partner, Moises, urged him to steel his resolve because they still had a job to do. Riley later woke up in a hospital bed after recovering from a severe head injury. Michael approached her to deliver some news. They had already detained 3 suspects matching the description of the shooters. He also revealed that the police found Chris's voicemail, proving he had rejected Mickey's offer. Unfortunately, that message never reached Garcia in time to save his life. Michael admitted that without concrete evidence or an eyewitness testimony, the department was powerless to move against Garcia himself.
We know everything, but can't prove anything.
Before leaving, Michael handed Riley a plastic bag containing the recovered, blood-stained photos of her family. Looking at them, Riley's memories sparked, and she confidently stated that she could positively identify the gunman. Riley was immediately brought to the police station for a lineup. She correctly and unhesitatingly pointed out the 3 men who murdered her family. However, Michael oddly pressed her, questioning whether she was absolutely certain of her choice.
Yes, I'm sure.
Following the lineup, Moises pulled Michael aside to warn him. He brought up a previous detective who had dared to investigate Garcia, only to be executed inside their very own headquarters. This meant Garcia had high-ranking moles on his payroll. Moises sternly warned Michael not to make the same fatal mistake, reminding him that playing the hero wouldn't bring Riley's family back.
Whatever happens with this case, let it happen. Don't be stupid.
Sometime later, a broke and grieving Riley was packing up her belongings, having been evicted from her apartment for falling months behind on rent. Suddenly, a slick defense attorney entered the room. He callously told her to move on with her life because nothing would bring her family back, and then handed her a bag stuffed with cash. It was a massive bribe intended to make her drop the charges against Garcia's men.
Spiritual, that's an antipsychotic. Your memory's a little hazy. Maybe you didn't see things the way you thought you saw them. You think that you're gonna have justice, make them all pay. They won't.
Infuriated by the insult, Riley rejected the money and furiously kicked the lawyer out. On the day of the preliminary hearing, that same corrupt attorney relentlessly cross-examined Riley. He aggressively questioned how she could possibly identify his clients on a dark night, emphasizing her distance from the shooters and the fact that their getaway vehicle was in motion.
I identified my clients, correct?
Yes, I did. They did it.
On any antipsychotic medication.
Is it possible
that your recollection isn't what you thought it was?
No. Wait, but you're not hearing me. Can you help me out? You're the district attorney.
Unbeknownst to Riley, the cartel's reach had already compromised the system. The judge, the prosecutor, and even her own legal counsel had been heavily bribed. Consequently, the judge dismissed the case and completely exonerated Garcia's 3 henchmen. Blinded by grief and rage, Riley tried to physically attack her family's killers right there in the courtroom, but court officers and police quickly restrained her. She was forced into an ambulance alongside Michael to be transported to a psychiatric facility. Realizing they were trying to institutionalize her, Riley violently overpowered the guards, broke out of the ambulance, and vanished into the chaos of the streets. Shortly after her escape, Moises and Michael visited the graves of Riley's family. There, they discovered fresh traces of blood on the tombstone, left behind by Riley's own hands as a final vow. The narrative shifts back to the present day, 5 years later. Michael and Moises arrive at a gruesome crime scene at the same carnival grounds. 3 bodies have been brutally executed and strung up high on the Ferris wheel. They are the exact 3 henchmen who murdered Riley's family. Meanwhile, at the FBI headquarters, a sharp agent named Lisa is briefed on Riley's extensive, newly discovered criminal profile. Recognizing the scale of the threat, Lisa agrees to collaborate with the local LAPD to investigate the vigilante killings. Following her recent executions, Riley is holed up in her hideout, meticulously prepping an arsenal of weapons for the next phase of her vendetta. After looking at a photo of her family and remembering their smiles, she breaks into the home of the corrupt judge who dismissed her case and binds him securely to a chair. At the same time, Lisa, Michael, and Moises hold a briefing regarding Riley's whereabouts. Lisa reveals that shortly after her disappearance, Riley robbed a massive sum of money from the bank where she used to work. She explains how incredibly disciplined and careful Riley has been over the past 5 years, traveling to various underground training circuits across different countries to stay completely off the grid.
She's a magnet. Why are you wasting our time?
That's Riley North.
Herself, in Europe last year.
So she spends the last 5 years bouncing around the world learning how to get into trouble.
She got really, really good at staying off the radar.
However, they have confirmed her return to Los Angeles via CCTV footage, which caught her raiding a hidden warehouse of military-grade weapons. She stole high-caliber firearms and specific types of ammunition, leading the officers to conclude that Riley now possesses elite tactical knowledge. Lisa then drops a crucial detail. Today marks the exact 5th anniversary of her family's murder. Back at the judge's house, Riley uses a hammer to nail the corrupt judge's hands to his desk, completely immobilizing him, and rigs a pipe bomb connected to a cell phone trigger.
I think that you're so damn corrupt, I don't even stand out. If you can tell me my name, I'll let you live. I mean, you'll eat out of a tube the rest of your life, but you'll live. Do you remember my name?
To finally deliver the justice the courts denied her, Riley calmly walks out, boards a city bus, and dials the phone, triggering a massive explosion that obliterates the house. Soon after, Michael receives an urgent dispatch call informing him of a coordinated hit. Both the cartel's defense lawyer and Riley's former defense attorney have been assassinated, alongside the total destruction of the judge's residence. Meanwhile, Garcia's right-hand man, Cortez, briefs the Kingpin on Riley's destructive crusade. Realizing this lone woman is systematically dismantling his empire, an infuriated Garcia orders a massive bounty to be placed on her head.
Some personnel stuff. You know how it goes.
And why I'm here. You know you shouldn't play games with the cartel. I came to deliver a message from my father. No vides quien te puso aquí.
It's just a misunderstanding.
One shipment goes missing. Maybe it's a mistake. But 2 in a week?
You think I tried to steal from you? That I lasted this long by being stupid? Everybody wants to be a big dog. Little dog's trying to eat my food. Hey, baby. Get the fuck out of here.
There's something you need to remember. You are still a little dog.
Back on the public bus, Riley spots a young boy who heavily reminds her of Carly. Softening for a moment, she hands the boy a small toy and asks how his father is doing. The child sadly explains that his father is a severe alcoholic and that he constantly has to guide him home safely. When the bus stops and the father takes his boy into a convenience store to buy more liquor, Riley follows and suddenly attacks the man in the aisle. She demands his ID, memorizes their home address, and beats him while warning him to start acting like a real father and give his son the love he deserves. Riley threatens him, stating she knows exactly who he is and where they live, and will come back if he fails.
I will never forget you, Brian.
Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you still doing here?
She then sternly warns the store clerk never to sell alcohol to the man again, before handing over a stack of cash to buy the clerk's personal vehicle on the spot. Now driving her newly acquired car, Riley stakes out a bustling nearby market. She spots Marvin, Garcia's personal accountant, who knows every dirty detail of the syndicate's operations, and correctly deduces that this location serves as a front for the cartel's massive drug business. Disguising herself as a homeless woman in ragged clothes, Riley blends into the alleyways. When a pair of armed cartel guards block her path, she unleashes a swift, lethal attack, dropping them effortlessly. She slips inside the building and discovers the cartel's central money laundering counting room. Inside, the remaining thugs are watching a breaking news report about Riley, where authorities are warning the public that she is an extremely dangerous and armed fugitive. Riley quietly peers into the counting room, but a guard spots her reflection and opens fire. The gunshots alert the rest of the cartel soldiers, who fan out across the complex to hunt her down. Using her elite tactical training and flawless close-quarters movements, Riley systematically executes the guards one by one. She drops down from the rafters, continuing her lethal sweep against the overwhelming wave of reinforcements. After clearing the lower level, she returns upstairs and terminates the remaining cartel members, deliberately leaving only Marvin alive because she needs information. Later that day, a battered and terrified Marvin arrives at Garcia's luxurious estate.
She's crazy, man.
You already said that, Marvin.
Yeah, well, I'm saying it again.
He tremblingly admits that Riley tortured him into giving up the exact locations of their entire logistics network. Furthermore, Marvin reveals that Riley didn't steal a single dime of the cartel's drug money. Instead, she doused the entire counting room in fuel and burned millions of Garcia's cash to ashes. As the media broadcasts reports of the burning cartel fronts, pointing to Riley as the prime suspect, Michael and Moises survey the charred crime scene. Michael mentions that he will check in with the narcotics division to get a list of Garcia's active safe houses so he can set up surveillance and catch Riley when she strikes. Moises, deeply suspicious, seriously warns Michael to be very careful about who he asks for information, noting that if he accidentally asks a cop who is secretly on Garcia's payroll, it could cost him his life. Sensing the walls closing in, Garcia retreats to his heavily fortified main compound to hide. He orders his remaining men to set a lethal ambush for Riley at their primary drug distribution warehouse, confident she will take the bait.
How'd she know about Marvin? The one guy who happened to know everything. She doesn't kill him.
She must have been watching us.
Oh, you think? Those missing shipments, it was her. Bitch has been f***ing with us for weeks.
And maybe she's expecting us to send everybody to the lab.
Bitch won't have the f***ing lab. I will give her the f***ing lab.
That night, Riley arrives at the dark warehouse. After taking a long look at the photo of her husband and daughter and suffering a brief, heartbreaking hallucination of Carly smiling at her, she steals her resolve and prepares to infiltrate the building. When she slips inside, she finds the vast facility completely deserted. Her tactical instincts kick in, and she quickly notices a hidden tripwire connected to a massive bomb setup. Before she can fully retreat, the cartel lookouts monitoring the building press a remote detonator, triggering a massive, fiery explosion that levels the entire warehouse. Michael receives immediate word of the blast and relays the news to Moises. Meanwhile, Garcia's hitmen drive away from the burning rubble, confident that Riley has finally been blown to pieces. However, a nearby manhole cover shifts, and a bruised, bloody, but very alive Riley emerges from the sewers. She immediately hijacks a nearby car to pursue the hitmen. As they drive, the two thugs call Garcia to report the successful assassination. Arrogantly believing Riley is finally dead, a delighted Garcia promises them a massive financial reward. Meanwhile, FBI agent Lisa decides to investigate Skid Row, the sprawling downtown area of homeless encampments Riley had been using as her primary base of operations. Crime reports indicated a strange anomaly. This specific, high-crime sector of Skid Row hadn't reported a single violent offense in 3 months. Walking through the crowded tents, she sees 2 young children playing safely. She asks a local resident if it isn't dangerous for kids to be out here, and the man smiles, replying that it used to be, but they now have a guardian angel protecting them. Lisa looks up at a nearby brick wall and sees a massive, spray-painted mural of a woman with angel wings, realizing Riley has been actively protecting the vulnerable people of Skid Row. Meanwhile, Riley tails the 2 thugs and ambushes them on the road. Inside the mansion, Garcia and Cortez are celebrating their apparent victory until they suddenly hear a news report revealing that Riley is still alive and out on the loose. The thug's car arrives at the estate, and Riley immediately takes out the guards to break onto the property. She steps out of the vehicle and executes the thugs one by one. Other cartel gunmen open fire on the car, and the gunfire alerts Garcia and Cortez inside. Riley then rams the vehicle straight into the house to force her way inside, where she continues the attack, eliminating Garcia's security detail as she advances through the halls. She eventually corners Garcia in his private safe room, pinning him at gunpoint.
What do you want? I want justice.
But just as she prepares to pull the trigger, Garcia's young daughter suddenly runs into the room. The sight of the innocent girl triggers another hallucination of Carly, causing Riley to hesitate. Seizing the moment of hesitation, Garcia brutally stabs Riley in the side with a concealed blade and flees the room with his daughter. Cortez and the remaining guards rush in to secure Garcia, but the distant, echoing sirens of the LAPD force them to abandon the estate and scatter. Bleeding heavily from her stab wound, Riley manages to slip away before the perimeter is formed. She drives to the suburban home of Peg, the woman who had sabotaged her daughter's birthday party 5 years ago.
Good evening, Peg. Everything they said about you is true.
I couldn't help but notice you're not wearing a ring on that finger anymore.
He left you.
Didn't he? Or someone younger, prettier?
Go f yourself.
Oops.
Yes, he left, okay? You're right. I am very sorry that Carly...
Don't say my daughter's name.
Okay,
Riley breaks in and binds her securely to a chair, where she terrifies Peg by threatening to blow up the house with her inside. Before walking out into the night, Riley takes Peg's car keys and calms her down by coldly saying, "Just kidding," leaving her unharmed but forever traumatized. Back at Garcia's ruined mansion, forensic teams are processing the scene. Moises notices that Michael is completely unreachable and isn't answering any pages from the narcotics division. In reality, Michael has tracked down Lisa, who calls him over to a secluded alleyway where she has discovered Riley's primary arms van, packed to the brim with tactical gear. Lisa mentions that if the internal rumors are true, Garcia must have a highly placed mole within the LAPD who has been feeding him operational tips. She states that she is about to call in every available agency to lock down the sector and take Riley alive. But then comes a shocking twist. Michael is actually Garcia's mole. Realizing his cover is about to be blown, he pulls out his gun and takes Lisa out right then and there. Michael immediately tips off Garcia with Riley's possible location, prompting Garcia to rally his entire crew.
I don't care if you have to burn the city down, but this shit ends tonight.
Riley is holed up in a dilapidated warehouse nearby, dangerously weak and losing blood rapidly from her stab wound. When Garcia and his heavily armed convoy arrive, they immediately fan out across the dark streets to hunt her down. Spurred on by a comforting hallucination of her daughter telling her to wake up, Riley forces herself to her feet and slips into the shadows just as a cartel thug discovers her fresh pool of blood. The thug radios Cortez to request backup, but Riley drops a massive heavy crate directly onto his head, killing him instantly. She takes his radio and overhears the cartel coordinating their search patterns. When Cortez and his team enter the room, they find a guard's body. As they move closer to inspect it, they trip a hidden grenade Riley left underneath. The blast disorients the team, allowing Riley to use the chaos to eliminate Cortez and his men. Riley picks up the radio and broadcasts a chilling message to the remaining cartel forces. "Bring me Garcia, or I will hunt every single one of you down." Garcia intercepts the transmission, furiously shouting back that she is outnumbered and will die in this place.
How you really think this is gonna go?
I'm gonna shoot you in your face, and then I'll pretty much figure it out from there.
Meanwhile, back at LAPD headquarters, Moises grows increasingly anxious. Neither Lisa nor Michael are answering their phones, raising red flags about a severe security breach. Returning to Skid Row, a staggering Riley discovers Lisa's body dumped unceremoniously in a dumpster. She retrieves Lisa's FBI-encrypted smartphone and devises a final strategy. At headquarters, Moises notices a breaking news alert on the screens, revealing Riley using Lisa's phone to livestream what's actually happening. She exposes Michael as a dirty cop on Garcia's payroll and broadcasts their exact coordinates, demanding that every honest police officer in the city descend on the location to dismantle Garcia's empire once and for all. Realizing the game is up, Garcia grabs a young girl from the crowd to use as bait. When Michael tries to stop him, an unhinged Garcia pulls a gun on his own mole, threatening that he's already too deep into this. Seeing the girl's life threatened, Riley is forced to step out of the shadows, dropping her weapons and surrendering. Garcia releases the girl, steps up to Riley, and begins viciously assaulting her. Michael desperately screams at Garcia to just finish her off, knowing the police are likely already on their way. But Garcia's ego consumes him. He wants to make Riley suffer a slow, agonizing end.
You hit like a girl.
As Garcia raises his gun to finish her, Riley spots a discarded firearm on the ground. At that exact microsecond, tactical police units roll up and swarm the street, sending the remaining cartel thugs scattering in a panic. Believing Michael orchestrated a trap, Garcia turns his gun on the dirty detective and shoots him dead. As SWAT teams flood the area, Garcia breaks into a sprint to escape, but Riley intercepts him in a secluded alley and pins him at gunpoint. Moises and a backup squad rush into the alley, screaming for Riley to drop her weapon and let them handle Garcia. But after watching the justice system completely fail her 5 years ago, she isn't putting her faith in them ever again. She looks Garcia in the eyes and pulls the trigger, executing the cartel kingpin on the spot. The surrounding officers immediately fire, striking Riley in the shoulder, but Moises loudly commands them to hold their fire. When the police cautiously advance through the smoke to secure her, they find nothing but an empty alleyway. Riley has vanished into the darkness yet again. A chopper sweeps the area with a searchlight, but they spot no trace of her. An officer tells Moises they need to set up a tight perimeter, but Moises just sighs, knowing it's completely useless as he already knows exactly where she's heading. The following morning, a battered and exhausted Riley kneels before the graves of her husband and daughter, softly whispering to them that it is finally over. Moises steps out from the trees and quietly approaches her. Riley looks up at him, pleading with him to just let her bleed out and die, stating that her family is waiting for her on the other side. Moises looks down at her compassionately, but shakes his head, telling her that he can't do that because her story isn't meant to end here.
It is for me.
In the final scene, a television news report details the highly publicized capture and arrest of vigilante Riley North, with officials promising the public that she will be held fully accountable for her string of homicides. Inside a secure hospital room, Moises visits a handcuffed Riley as she recovers from her extensive injuries. He quietly expresses his personal gratitude, acknowledging that her actions completely destroyed one of the largest drug cartels in the country and successfully rooted out the deep-seated corruption within his own department. As Moises turns to leave the room and bids her goodbye, the camera pans to Riley's hand. The final shot reveals that during their handshake, Moises had secretly slipped the key to her handcuffs into her palm, giving the vigilante mother one final chance at freedom. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more movies coming your way.